Hi guys. All right, today is Monday the 8th, and we are going to get started with math. So let me pull up this here. All right, so today we continue talking about parallel and perpendicular lines. So the first thing we did is we just went over and reviewed what that exactly means. So let me pull this up here. Oh, hold on, we need light. All right, so when we talk about parallel lines and perpendicular lines, we've actually got three different types. So the first type we talked about last week are intersecting. And they form more of a V shape. Like if you turn it and you look at all these angles that are formed, they look to me like that letter V. They make these acute and obtuse angles. So intersecting lines, they cross, so they have a point where they meet. So here they're meeting at point X, and you get all these angles that form. And like I said, they make that V shape. They, like, this would be obtuse, obtuse. These would be acute and acute. And so these are lines that cross, and the other lines that cross are perpendicular lines. But if you look at the difference, look how these make that L shape. And if I continue to turn my paper, they continue to make that L shape. Okay, upside down L, upside down L, L. They have very, very straight lines that look like a capital letter L. So these are lines, they intersect just like the intersecting lines, but they form a 90-degree angle. They make that right angle. Okay, so these are special kinds of intersecting lines because they form that right angle. Then this one in the middle, these are lines that never intersect. Okay, so these will never meet, they never intersect, they never come together. They are the exact same position. Like if I look from this point to this point and this point to this point, they are the same distance from each other. Okay, so here DE we say is parallel to FG. Now, sometimes, let me draw an example real quick. Sometimes you have lines that are not intersecting, and you can't, like if I look at these lines, I can't say that these are parallel just because they're not touching. Okay, so not touching is not a deal breaker, because what happens is this line, because it's got that arrow, that means that it's going to continue and continue and continue. And this one's got the arrow, meaning it's going to continue and continue and continue. So at some point, they will intersect. So even though they're not right now, at some point they will. Okay, so when you see parallel lines, they will look the same distance apart. And if they were to keep going in whatever direction they're facing, they will never, ever, 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 ever touch. Okay. And again, remember when you have those two L's, you're thinking, okay, that's my example of what a parallel line looks like. So after we reviewed, we headed over to 13.3 in our book, and we looked at this section on page 462. So we said right here we drew line segment QR, and we said it's parallel to ST. So we drew the line segment, the endpoints here, labeled them QR, and then ST is parallel. And then here within the shape, we found sides that were parallel. So we said that this CB is parallel to DF. They're opposite of each other. They're not touching. They will never touch. And so therefore they're parallel. Now, so there was parallel. That was my keyword there. The other one here, perpendicular. So perpendicular means when you see this word, I want you to think that that's that right angle. Okay, that right angle that forms 90 degrees, that looks like that L shape. So here we saw this is a rectangle. So we have all of our corners here form 90-degree angles. So we just picked one. So we said this one right here, so this line segment here is perpendicular to this line segment here, because when they meet at point B, they form that 90-degree angle. So BC is perpendicular to BF. Then down here, you have a what's the error. So we talked about this one, and we said that we've got all of these lines here, and it says that Dan is saying that HL is parallel to IM. And just like I talked about on that blue page, if we were to, you can't just say, oh, these are parallel because they're not touching. If you extend those lines and show that that keeps moving in those directions, they will eventually touch at this point here. So because they're going to eventually touch, they are not parallel. All right, after that, everybody headed over to page 466, and we just went through and we just marked everywhere that we saw parallel. We went ahead and highlighted that one color. We circled those L's to remind us what parallel means. Every time we found that word perpendicular, we highlighted that a different color, and we put, okay, those are our ones that are talking about the right angles, those 90 degrees, and so we marked that. So that was what we did together. And those, if you go over here to the agenda, not the agenda, Google Classroom, and go to your classwork, if you log into, where is it, right here, math recording sheet Monday through Friday, if you click on the link, it'll take you to this, and your page is 466, all the problems. So you just click in here, and this is where you'll record 6, 7, 8, and so on, all the way to 11. And you're just going to type whether it's A, B, C. All of these are multiple choice, so you put in your letter there. Then it says if your answer choice doesn't have, if it's not a multiple choice, then you need to write in the words. So later on in the week, we'll have where we actually have to put in a word. We'll just type that in there. All right, so that was math. And then for group today, where am I? Agenda. For group today, we went over page 452. And so it was just a little bit of extra geometry practice. So make sure you get a chance to look through that, because especially last week with that short week, or those couple short days, make sure that you're feeling confident with all of the different angles and so on. So go back to that. All right, today in reading, if you go to Seesaw, go to your activities, go down, 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 down to reading week 23 whole group. You're going to click on this. Oops, let me open mine. So in reading today, we started reading A Caterpillar's Tale. And if you look at the agenda this week, we have a reading test on Thursday. So the first few days, we're just reviewing with some of the different texts that we've used throughout this unit. And then we'll do our test on Thursday. And so today was Caterpillar's Tale. And so we read the story about a caterpillar, and he's building his cocoon. So he's making they don't refer to it as a cocoon, they refer to it as his house. So he's building his house and building and building, and along comes Ant, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Well, I'm building my home." And then Bee starts in on it also, and they start making fun of him, and they're like, shouldn't you get a hive, or shouldn't you go find a like under a rock like an ant would, and those are the kind of homes that you need. Like, what are you doing? And then he closes himself all up, and he's still in there, and he's like, he's hiding in, he looks like he's hiding in there, and they notice that he doesn't have a door. And so then he starts laughing because he has no door. So we read the story, and then, eventually he comes on, he's this moth, and they're all like, oh my gosh, like, we should have minded our own business and let him do his own thing. Like, that's the lesson in the end is, take care of yourself. And what does it say? It says, everyone knows his own business best. So he knew the whole time, he knew what he was doing, and he didn't let the others kind of defer him from like what he was, like what his goal was. And so there was a lesson at the end. So we just read today, we kind of went back and we just jotted down some notes. Okay, like in this section, this is where they're doing this and so on. So we just kind of annotated on the side here. We talked about this word absurd, since we saw that it was underlined, and talked about, what it means in the story. So they're talking about, like, why, like, what on earth are you doing? And Caterpillar says, oh, it's the only house that I know how to make. And they're like, oh, I've never heard of anything so absurd. So we practice looking in the dictionary and how we look that up. And the definition of absurd is silly or ridiculous. So we were talking about, okay, like, why is that the correct definition, like how that fits back into the story. And then tomorrow we'll start looking at some of the questions. So we read today, talked about it today. Tomorrow we got questions. So hit draft on that. And then everybody's independent work, if you go here, if you go back to week 22, same thing, because it was such a small week, we didn't have a lot of time to finish. So whatever your book was, we didn't finish the questions at the end. So I gave time for that today. So 1 through 5, or one group was 1 through 4. Make sure your questions, whether you are group C, group B, or group A, you've got the set of questions that go with your book. Make sure you get that turned in on Seesaw. And then when you are done, independent reading, eSpark. And then we also read from our book, The Wild Robot. And then for writing today, you've got a video here to watch about reflective pronouns. And then we took some notes in our notebook. And so if you open up your notebook to a clean page, we took some notes. We titled it Reflective or Reflexive Pronouns. And it says we use a reflexive pronoun when we want to refer back to the subject of the sentence. So picture like you're holding up a mirror and you're seeing your reflection back to you. It's kind of the same thing. So you have certain pronouns that you're going to use for if you're talking about a subject that is singular, and you have some if your subject is plural. So if I'm talking about, doing the dishes, I could say, I can do the dishes all by myself. Okay, so I am talking about myself. If I'm talking about you, I could say, you can do the dishes by yourself. Now, if I talk about plural, I could say, they could do the dishes themselves. So there's certain ones that get matched up depending on what subject we're using, whether it's singular, whether it's plural. So when we're using these within our writing, we want to make sure that we're using the correct pronouns. Otherwise, like if I say I can do the dishes by yourself, like that's kind of confusing. It doesn't make sense, and now my reader is very confused. So just making sure that we're using the correct one. So the video goes into more detail, so you can watch that as well. And then this week, if you look at our composition each week, we're doing writing samples. So we have in Google Classroom, we have writing samples that we're collecting this week, and it's really just your turn to show me what you've learned. Like, what do we need? Like, I've done a lot of, like we've been holding each other's hands, walking through step by step by step. Okay, everybody do your introduction. Okay, now we're going to do the body. Okay, everybody, we're going to do the conclusion now. And there's been a lot of hand holding. Okay, so I'm kind of breaking away, and I want to see. Okay, here, if I just give you a prompt, if I just give you something to write about, and I tell you, okay, write, what do you produce? Do you produce that introduction, body, and conclusion on your own? Do you have all the parts that I told you are important? Are you remembering them? Are you adding them into your writing? And if not, we need to say, okay, stop. Let everybody remember, we said that a conclusion needs to have blank, blank, and blank. So it's just kind of like a little checkpoint this week. So we've got different prompts that we're going to do each day. Today we did this first one. So you're explaining to a third grader what science experiments are like in fourth grade. So write the date, you can just copy and paste the prompt, and then you just start typing into this document. So start off with your introduction, go to your body, go to your conclusion, make sure what you're writing responds to this. What are science experiments? So third grader, they don't know about fourth grade. You teach them what it's like to be in my science class. Okay. So we had that for today. So the rest of the time was just spent writing. And then we went to lunch and recess and came back, and we did the phases of the moon closed reading activity. So that is on this first one here, week 23 science. And line up. All right, so the 1, 2, 3. So this first page just talks about like what closed reading is, and it's just a way to really like take a text and just dig in deeper. So the first time you read it, you're just reading for understanding. You are just like, okay, this is what the text is about, just getting those main ideas. The second time you read it, you're digging deeper. You're talking more about the vocabulary, how the author set up the writing, things like that. The third time you're reading it, you're really just digging that much more into it. Okay, so talking about the why, taking kind of like if it's something that like maybe you have information on the topic as well, you're kind of applying it to that what you read and kind of making those connections and things like that. And so you just each time you look at something, you just keep going more and more and just digging more and more into it. So this was our recording sheet that we used. I didn't put enough because I think we're going to need another one. So we duplicated the page and we pulled it all the way down to the bottom here and just made another copy just in case. So this is the one we recorded on. And so today we read Let's Visit the Moon. So it's page 3 and page 4. And so we said this text is all about the moon. And just some of the things that we learned just off the bat, just those kind of not specific, but just those general topics. We know that it talked about its size, the atmosphere, its position, weather, temperature, gravity, some of the features like what it looks like and things like that. Just kind of an overview, just, we know that when we read this, these were the things that it mentioned. Now, off of the top of my head, just reading it one time, I can't really tell you the specific details, but that's not the point. The point of the first read is just to get this general idea of this is what the text is about. And I know these topics were mentioned. When we get into the second read, we'll dig deeper and get more into it. So make sure you've read page 3 and page 4, and then go ahead, fill in. What did you learn? What is it about? All right, and then draft that. Then for social studies, here, you can click and watch this. Make sure you're logged into your Launchpad, and then we did the Monday's questions. Now, Monday's questions, I got to ask Miss Klein about this because they weren't quite lined up. So we kind of talked about them together. So the story on Monday is all about when slaves were told that they no longer needed to be slaves, they were free, and talking about, kind of what it was like. But the information lined up really well with the video, but there was some, like when it starts talking about mama and stuff, we didn't have a mama in our story. So that was kind of a little glitch I got to find out about. So paragraph 3, this question, that wasn't there. So I can't talk. I went over these with the class. So paragraph 3, it wanted you to say it was about how everyone reacted after hearing the slaves were free. So what happened is, everybody in the North, like we have word that this is signed and that we no longer have slavery and that's now illegal and so on, and things were being published and things like that in the North, but it wasn't the same in the South because obviously they're upset, like they just lost all their free labor and told that, hey, this way of life is now like you can't have all these people, like you don't own these people. So there were some people that were ticked off. So they're not going to go around like, hey guys, everybody's free to go, like you're no longer belong to me. Like they're going to try to hold on to what they have as long as possible because again, they didn't support that. A lot of people didn't support that choice in the South. So it took a while, about 2 years to be exact, before everybody's like finding out that, hey, like this was signed and slaves are now free and so on. So it took a while. And so when word did finally get there, They are celebrating, they are happy, they are jumping for joy. Families were being reunited. Just pure joy. So this part here, when it talks about, let me move me. This part when it talks about how Mama probably feels, she feels extremely happy. Okay, so how they reacted, Mama feels happy. Scoot these back over. And then this third one, Mama and Sally. Now, again, it talks a little bit about this, but there's no Mama and Sally. So, again, we talked about this one. So it says that they probably haven't seen Papa in a long time because he works on another plantation, is the answer for that one. And so what happened is you've got people and they're not treated like people. They're not treated like human beings. They're treated like something that you just, when you need it, you buy it, and when you don't, you sell it. So, which was extremely sad and ridiculous. And so families didn't matter that you had, a husband and a wife and children and so on. You weren't a human, so nobody took into consideration that, hey, oh well, this man's married to this lady, so they need to be on this plantation together and work together. Like, that didn't matter. If someone needed to sell someone, or if someone needed somebody, you were just kind of ripped apart from your family. And so you might have had dad, whoever these people are that they're talking about. Dad might have been sold to another plantation, and so it's not like, oh, he can, well, we can at least see him on the weekends or whatever. Dad is gone. Okay, so they haven't seen him in a long, long time because he was taken and sold to another area, and he doesn't have transportation. He doesn't have the ability to leave. He is stuck on this plantation working and living, and kind of has to, he's completely separated from his family. So that was that one. And then this one, number 4, you can find that in this text right here. So I apologize that this didn't line up very well, but hopefully we got it figured out. And make sure you make sure you read this because it's still good information. And make sure you click on this agenda where it says click to watch. Make sure you click that and watch that because again, that's good information that we need to know. Alrighty, enrichment and intervention time. We continued working on our writing. Oh my goodness, this was a chore today trying to get kiddos to write. Every day we have a sample. So if you look at this is Monday, this is Tuesday, this is Wednesday, this is Thursday, this is Friday. We're doing 5 of these today, or 5 of these this week. So if you didn't do Monday, well, now on Tuesday you have 2. On Friday, if you don't do them all, you're going to have 5 to do. So I really need everybody to make sure that they are keeping up. And if you're absent, hopefully you're watching this, get this done, because tomorrow, the next day, you're going to have another, and then you're going to have another, and then you're going to have another. So make sure you're staying on top of this. And if you do one a day, it's very, very manageable versus waiting and then having several papers to write. And we're not talking about just one paragraph. We're talking about 4 to 5 paragraphs each. So the other part I have kept very short this week. We just have little tiny mini lessons on these things. The samples are given a lot of time in class, so there is no reason why. And plus, I'm giving all of this down here. This is all writing time. So there is a significant amount of time, more than enough to get all that done. So please make sure you're using that time wisely. Alrighty. And that wrapped up today. That's all I got. So I will see you guys tomorrow.